Shabina Asad Qayyum for Salam Radio 106.2 FM. And guess what? This is the Body, Health and Mind Show. It's an absolute delight to be back after such a long, and I'm not going to say it was a relaxing break, it was a very arduous one actually, but I'm so pleased to be back with all of you on Salam Radio 106.2 FM. We love being part of the Salam Radio family, and I just want to share with all of you how wonderful it was coming into the studio to see new additions to the team who are going to get my shout out. And I'd like to give a shout out to our new station manager, who is Kieran Issa, who gave me a beautiful welcome. He's young, and we have members of the community, of the Muslim community here in Peterborough, who just want to make Salam Radio bigger and better. And who better to do so than our youngsters and our youth in the community? So I'd really like for all of you to join your hands together to give Kieran a big round of applause, and also to make dua for him that he is successful and he builds on this experience, and that he really does make a name for himself out there if he's interested in the world of radio, because Salam Radio is a wonderful place to start. Now, my name is Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum. I am actually a GP, and I would be biased if I said that I'm at the best practice in Peterborough, which is Bretton Park Healthcare within Peterborough. I love the work I do, but I also love talking to you as well. And all of you know that Salam Radio really is a great mixture of different shows brought by people from different backgrounds, different languages, different ethnicities, and even different faith backgrounds. And that's what Salam Radio really is about. It's a station that promotes unity, to build bridges with other communities, and also the strength of inclusivity and collaboration, which is really important. And I really think that that's an important message to give out every single week, that we really do pride ourselves in Peterborough on being a city that has so many different nationalities, diverse backgrounds. And the other beautiful thing that I notice is, when I look at Peterborough, especially in the Muslim community, the sheer number of Muslim community members that also come from different country backgrounds. So we have people that come from the Middle East, we have people that come from the Indian subcontinent, we have people who are dotted around the world, but make Peterborough the beautiful, what I like to call, patchwork quilt of diversity. And we really do need to take pride in the fact that we've got such a wonderful asset in Salam Radio 106.2 FM. So what is my show about? My show really is about health and well-being, and anything that is actually, I would say, the hot news in health. And if you've been with me, or if you've known, or if you've followed my show, you will know that I have always, throughout even the COVID years, have always wanted to talk about the hot topics that people really like to know about. So I've been thinking about what I need to do and why I need to present a show on what topic. And this week, I actually thought about doing something that I see quite a lot of, and actually is something that isn't really very well understood, especially with presenting symptoms. So it's really important that I talk about it, but I'd like to do so with you on board. And how I'd like to do that is if you would choose to, because you engage with me a lot on the Facebook Live, which is great. That's one portal of Salam Radio videos, but it would be great if you could call in and just have a chat with me on 01733 602 133, or you can text us on WhatsApp on 07411 191062. Comment, like you always do, on the live stream on Facebook, on YouTube, X or Twitch. And that is the intro that I'm giving for today. But moreover, I'd really like to have a look at why I'm going to be talking about my condition that I have brought to the fore, which is rheumatoid arthritis. Why I think it's really important, why I think that people need to know a little bit about it, because it's one of those conditions that people don't really understand the gravity of. It can be quite a serious illness. It's a continuous illness. It's a destructive type of illness, and it's not reversible. So it's what we deem by medical terminology as being irreversible. So you've got reversible conditions and you've got irreversible conditions. And a lot of patients who come to me who have English as a second language especially say, oh, well, I've got pain in my joints, and the doctors say I've got arthritis. But actually what is more important is the fact that there are different types of arthritis, and you've got the non-dangerous type of arthritis that I like to put forward to my patients to say that's wear and tear arthritis, you know, the arthritis that you tend to get in the later stages in your life because you've used your joints a lot, and they're more prevalent in the big joints. But then you've got the dangerous type of arthritis, which is the progressive, destructive type of arthritis, which is called rheumatoid arthritis. And that's the one that I want to talk about today, because I am seeing more and more patients who are younger and who are developing this type of arthritis. So it's really important that we speak about it. So what is it? What is rheumatoid arthritis? Rheumatoid arthritis is exactly what it says in the name. Now, rheumatology is the study of bones, joints, tendons, soft tissue structures like your muscles, your ligaments, and all that sort of mesh of connective tissue which pulls these structures together, as well as the fluid in which the joints bathe, which is called synovial fluid. Rheumatology is the study of all of these structures. So I hope that we can understand that this is where the word rheumatoid arthritis comes from, because there is a swelling or an inflammation of all of those structures from a destructive point of view of those joints. And there is pain associated with that. There is swelling associated with that. And if your joints are subjected to persistent pain and swelling over time, this inflammation can, in fact, damage those affected joints. So it is very, very important that we pick up on those joints in the earlier stages, because the earlier this is picked up, the better the chances are of stopping or at least delaying the progression of this condition, rheumatoid arthritis. And the other thing is that rheumatoid arthritis can also be associated with other conditions that are to do in the body. So, for example, you'll have connective tissue diseases like lupus. You may have heard of the word lupus, and I can do another show on that. Or there may be other conditions, inflammation of the vessels, that is known as vasculitis, where the immune system actually destroys the joints and the vessels, which can cause an array of problems, including pain, swelling, temperature. So rheumatoid arthritis is one of those progressive arthritis, but the mainstay of treatment is that the earlier the treatment is started in rheumatoid arthritis, the less joint damage that is likely to occur. And surgery is sometimes needed in some cases if a joint becomes very badly damaged. Now, you can have ranges of severity in rheumatoid arthritis. You can have very mild to very severe rheumatoid arthritis. And there are some disease-modifying drugs that you can take. And it's interesting because part of my idea to do this show actually came from the fact that I work in an area that is in dire need of a pharmacy at this moment in time in Peterborough. So I was going out and gaining letters from people who have complex medical conditions, and many residents and patients that I spoke to had said that they were on what we call disease modifying drugs, which are drugs or medications to slow down these type of illnesses such as rheumatoid arthritis. And what they do is these disease-modifying drugs, the sooner they are started on an individual who has rheumatoid arthritis, the better. And this can help prevent or delay the progression of rheumatoid arthritis, and it also eases the pain. So the key is here that as soon as and the earlier that this condition is detected, the better chances of preserving the joints and also maintaining the mobility of an individual as well. So I hope that that's given a bit of insight. Where if you've just joined us now, this is Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum on the Body, Health and Mind Show on Salam Radio 106.2 FM. Wonderful to have you on board. Please call us on 01733 602 133, or you can text us on 07411 191062, and you can comment on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, X or Twitch. So that was what it was. Now, when we talk a little bit about rheumatoid arthritis, I've already spoken about the fact that arthritis means inflammation of the joints. And rheumatoid arthritis is actually quite common. You know, we wouldn't realise it, but it is. And it's only one cause of the types of arthritis that an individual can suffer from. So it's only one cause. And about 1 in 100 people develop rheumatoid arthritis at some stage in their lives. It can happen to anyone. It doesn't usually run in families. That's the good thing about it. But the thing is that it can develop at a very young age, and most commonly starts between the ages of 30 and 50. It can occur in children and it can occur in teenagers, but this is very rare. And I remember doing a house officer placement in Karachi in Pakistan, and I can remember very well that there had been a very young girl who was suffering from juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. And part of, and her memory actually stays with me for a very long time, because I remember that she was in sepsis, she was in septic shock, she developed an infection, and the infection had arisen from one of her joints because she was suffering from this destructive type of arthritis. And I remember she was admitted into ICU. I was the doctor on ICU at that time, and as a result of her sepsis, she was going into cardiac arrest after every hour. And I've never in my life had to resuscitate a patient throughout the night, but I was so determined to resuscitate her that I did. And we had antibiotics pumping away at the same time and resuscitating her. And then after a while, her heart would stop again and we would resuscitate her again. And that young girl survived. But what did remain with me was just the gravity of having something as serious as juvenile rheumatoid arthritis in somebody so young. And I think she was about 13. But it was very frightening. So when I see that a patient presents to me, and I'll talk to you a little bit about this further down the line, but when I do see that a patient has developed joint pains and aches, especially young people with swelling, then I have a very low threshold of investigating them, because I think that that's really important. And like I said, it can happen to anyone, and it's very common between the ages of 30 and 50. So it's important that we talk about this. The other statistics around rheumatoid arthritis are that it's 3 times more common in women than it is in men, which we're not sure why there is this gender disbalance and why it is more accumulated in women than it is in men. This could be due down to hormonal factors and the fact that the female hormones, how they affect the joints in a way, and whether that puts them at extra risk of developing inflammation in the joints, we don't know, or whether it actually puts them at risk of developing more immunocompromised situations. But yeah, the statistic is there. And it's important that we think about the structure of a normal joint when we talk about how rheumatoid arthritis can affect joints. And one of them is that we're just imagine, for example, your knee joint, and just put your own knee in front of you. You can, listening to this, you can stretch your own knee out in front of you and think about what makes up your knee joint. Now, your knee joint is actually where the leg bends. Yeah, that's your knee, where you have your kneecap, in case any of you didn't know. But yes, I thought I'd remind you. And you've got your thigh bone that meets with your leg bone. And then you've got a gap, actually, between those both bones. You've got a gap and you have fluid in that gap that's known as synovial fluid, and that's the normal fluid that you have within any joint, in your elbow, in your knee, in your hips, in your ankle, and that is what makes it easier for the joint to move on itself. So you've got your synovial fluid, and you've got your top thigh bone, and you've got your leg bone, and then you've got something known as your cartilage, and your cartilage actually is what we call a added sort of a stretchy type of a substance, or something that's a little bit more softer than bone but more of a cushiony structure, and cartilage acts to cushion the bones against each other so they don't rub against each other and break down. So that's your cartilage. And then you have your tendons, which are the rubber band-like structures that are on the end of muscles that attach themselves to your joints to make your joints movable. And then you have your ligaments, which are, again, small band-like structures. And ligaments actually hold the joint together without being attached to muscles. So you've got one on either side of your knee joint. And from then on, you've got something which is known as the synovium, which is the small sliver of tissue that covers the cartilages as well. So that all in all is what we would call the structure of a joint. And that's really important if you really want to know about what is the structure of a joint, how rheumatoid arthritis affects a joint. It's really important to think about that as well. So going on from there, talking to you about the joint is where two bones meet, as I've said as well. And it's important to have healthy joints because joints allow you to move and to allow various parts of your body to become flexible. So you'll have your elbows or your knees or your hips. And can you imagine if any of them is swollen or subjected to pain in anywhere, then it's difficult to maintain that amount of flexibility, especially like for Muslims, for example. You know, we pray Salah and going into sajda, going into ruku. You can imagine those movements. You need to have healthy hips before you bend down, and you need to have healthy knees before you go into sajda. So the health of a joint really does depend upon those structures that are largely your knee joint, that are your tendons, that are your ligament, that are the muscles and the synovial fluid. So understanding the structure of a joint is very important. And also if you associate that with some of the movements that you make, especially when Muslims make their movements in prayer, that is how you can understand. Now, what we do is that when we're looking at how rheumatoid arthritis is caused, it's thought to be something known as an autoimmune disease. And what does that mean? It basically means that your own immune system develops antibodies, and antibodies, as you all know, are used to attack foreign cells like viruses and bacteria that attack you and make you unwell. These are the fighting mechanisms in the body that try to hit back and ensure that you are safe from those outside interventions. But sometimes what can happen, and what's thought to happen in the case of rheumatoid arthritis, is that your immune system, for some reason, makes a mistake and it starts to attack the joints in your body. And it's thought that in some people where this happens, it's thought that there may be a trigger factor to it. We don't know what the trigger factor is in rheumatoid arthritis, but sometimes it has been thought to be having a virus, for example, where the immune system is down, and rather than coming out, it has a delayed response, and then it starts to attack the joints instead of the actual virus that has affected you. So there are numerous reasons as to why you can have your own immune system attacking your own tissues. That is known as an autoimmune attack. So it's known to be an autoimmune disease as well. Now, in people that have rheumatoid arthritis, antibodies are formed against the tissues that surrounds each of the joint. And the tissue that surrounds the joint, if you remember what the description was of the knee joint that I gave you, is called the synovium. It covers the cartilage, if you remember. So when those antibodies who are supposed to fight infections don't become your best friend anymore and decide that they're going to attack the lining of the joints that's known as the synovium, it could be that that could progress to rheumatoid arthritis. And that is what it's formed. That is what is thought to cause rheumatoid arthritis, that whole process. And over time, this inflammation of that synovium, which is that bit of tissue that I was speaking about, covering the joints, it can damage the joint, it can damage the cartilage, and it can damage parts of the bone near to the joint as well. So all in all, it's an autoimmune disease. It affects women more than men, and it affects the synovium, which is the lining of the joint, attacked by your own immune system, the trigger of which isn't known. But in some cases, it has been stipulated, although there's no real evidence to substantiate that it could be a virus that triggers off this whole immune response and gets this, sort of destruction of the joint. So that is what, in a nutshell, is rheumatoid arthritis. And if you've joined just now, you are more than welcome to come and join me on the show. And I've got a lovely, lovely friend of mine who's Johnny Richardson. I do really admire Johnny. Johnny Richardson, my wonderful friend. Excellent explanation he has said. I'm really glad that you're finding it interesting, Johnny. Honestly, it really is. And I really like that profile picture of that lady who's handing you that frame in the photograph. I wonder who she is. That's a photograph of many moons ago. And what a day of pride it was, Johnny, to present that award to you. I'm so, so glad and pleased that you have joined this show on the Body, Health and Mind Show. It's lovely to have you. Thank you very much for coming on board. So that, in a nutshell, is what rheumatoid arthritis is. Now, one of the things that I'm going to talk to you a little bit about before we go to a break in the next 2 minutes is that rheumatoid arthritis, those people that have rheumatoid arthritis, you've probably seen a lot of people that have very bent fingers in different wonky positions, I like to call it. And these deformities are as a result of the destruction of that joint that rheumatoid arthritis has destroyed. So you've got the hands. If you have a look at the hands, somebody that has the normal wear and tear osteoarthritis will tend to have bigger, rounded knuckles. And that's osteoarthritis. But somebody with rheumatoid arthritis has very bent fingers in all different kinds of positions, especially the joint that is underneath the nail of each hand. Those can be bent forward, then you can have the joint behind that can be bent backwards, and that's something that's known as a swan neck deformity. So if I were to hold my index finger up and try to bend it from the joint that is directly below the nail of my index finger and then bend my hand back, you'll see that your finger starts looking at a swan. And if those people that suffer from rheumatoid arthritis actually have a progressive destruction of that joint or of the joints in the small hands if they're not given medication soon enough. And what that can lead to is something known as a swan neck deformity of the fingers, because that's what the hands start to look like. The fingers start to look like a swan's neck. And how beautiful are these creatures that are swans, that we look at them, but actually it doesn't look very nice on the fingers. So I wouldn't encourage anybody to not treat the rheumatoid arthritis if they want swan neck deformity, because it's not, and it's very painful as well indeed. And we have Lee Taylor, who has joined us as well. Evening, Lee, I hope you're well. And actually one of these shows about the rheumatoid arthritis aspect, the immunocompromised aspect, I am broadcasting because I know of lovely people like yourself who like to take an interest in things that cause pain within the joints. So yes, this is one condition, one of those conditions that is. So we are now coming up to a break. Now, after the break, I'd like to talk to all of you a little bit actually, about which joints are affected in rheumatoid arthritis, what to look out for. Obviously, to have a look at rheumatoid arthritis symptoms. What symptoms would you get? How does it actually develop and progress? How do we diagnose it? To look at other diseases and complications as well, and also the importance of early diagnosis and treatment, and what the outlook is for rheumatoid arthritis. And to remind you that at 17:38, we've also got the Azan. Join me, therefore, after the break. Don't go away.
2020 World Buffet is inspired by the best foods from around the world. See our teppanyaki chefs grill your food to order, or choose delicious Indian, Italian, Chinese, Mexican dishes and British favourites, all halal. 2020 World Buffet offers you unlimited food at a set price. Open 7 days for lunch and dinner. Catering, wedding and party services available too. Call 01733 566 320 or visit 2020buffet.co.uk. 2020 World Buffet, 35 New Road, Peterborough, PE1 1FJ.
Craving authentic Desi flavors? Look no further than Desi Restaurant. From midday until 1 in the morning, enjoy our homemade specialties that will transport your taste buds. Indulge in tantalizing papri chaat and savor the rich Chersi Kadahi. Treat your friends to our fresh 1 kilogram Chersi lamb handi. Plus, get 2 12-inch pizzas for $11.95. Located at 298 Lincoln Road, we deliver from lunchtime until 1 a.m. Call 01733 555 795 now to order and experience Desi Restaurant's flavors.
At Cake Inn, all our cakes and slices are freshly baked for that delicious taste. At Cake Inn, we bake 100% vegetarian and halal eggless fresh queen cakes. Delicious flavoured cakes for birthdays and weddings, ceremonies and all other occasions, with free customised messages, even balloons and candles too. Order for delivery or collection from Cake Inn, 489 Lincoln Road, PE1 2PE, and your cake could be ready within 2 hours. Find out more and order online at cakeinn.co.uk or call 01733 496 584.
Are you a savvy shopper searching for the best food deals? Look no further. Adams Cash and Carry can help you save big. We're not just a food wholesaler for takeaways and restaurants. We also welcome household customers at our warehouse in Westwood, Peterborough. Visit our website and enjoy wholesale prices on everything from drinks to flour, rice to burgers and much more. To shop, go online and collect in store. Visit adamscashandcarry.co.uk today to start your savings spree.
For the top pizza in Peterborough, visit Top's Pizza. Established in 1988 for delicious pizzas with freshly made dough daily. View the extensive and mouthwatering menu online at topspizza.co.uk. Then choose from traditional tasty toppings, something different, or create your own with fresh 100% halal meats, salads, veg, and a great choice of sides too. Call into Top's Pizza, 52 Broadway, PE1 1SB. Call 01733 913 775 or order online for delivery or collection.
Do you own a restaurant or takeaway? Cater Fair is an expert supplier of new and used commercial catering equipment. Visit caterfair.co.uk for quality equipment on sale at the lowest prices, or call us on 01733 310 115 or visit us at 11 Royce Road, Fengate, Peterborough.
Satisfy your cravings at Ibrahimi Buffet Restaurant. Enjoy a tantalising variety of Chinese, Italian, Pakistani and comfort food favourites, from starters to desserts. Kids under 5 dine for free, so bring the whole family to our location at 63 Sycamore Avenue. Open every day from 5 p.m. till 10:30 p.m. Call us on 01733 313131 or book online to reserve your table. Ibrahimi-restaurant.co.uk. Every bite is a delight at Ibrahimi Buffet Restaurant.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the Body, Health and Mind Show, 106.2 FM. It's a delight to join you after the break with those cheerful set of advertisements, which I always take great pleasure in listening to. And we've got a variety of businesses, obviously, that advertise with Salam Radio. So I would appreciate that you all listen to these various big businesses that are using the Salam Radio platform to promote themselves. As we know, it's always good to support local, isn't it? So during the course of the advertisements, we've had a comment from Johnny. So Johnny says, my mum had rheumatoid arthritis following rheumatic fever while nursing during World War II. Age 25, it's a terrible lifelong disease. I agree with you, Johnny, and that was the reason why I spoke about juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. And it's really interesting that you actually say that, because I'm looking at the dynamics of young people, especially young people, and the burdens psychologically and physically that they had to have during World War II. And obviously there was a great deal of lack of nutrition and the choice of food that we have now. So obviously there was a lot of malnourishment that was going on, and you do say that your mother was nursing at the time, and I'm wondering that interesting dynamic as to whether that kick-started or triggered off an immune response that then led to attacking the joints that we're talking about that is so commonly associated with rheumatoid arthritis. So I think that's really interesting, and thank you so much for sharing that, because it's the whole dynamic of World War II, how people were malnourished, how your mother was nursing, and how her immune system would have been so weak to the extent that actually it may have triggered off something. So it's really interesting. Thank you very, very much for sharing that with us. Thank you indeed. So when we talk about the joints that are affected in rheumatoid arthritis, let's talk about the fact that the difference between the joints that are affected in rheumatoid arthritis and the other wear and tear arthritis. So just for simplicity purposes, let's refer to the other type of arthritis as wear and tear arthritis, which are osteoarthritis. Your dog walkers, people that use their joints a lot and walk a lot, suffer from. And rheumatoid arthritis is more of a destructive malignant disease. And the most common affected joints in rheumatoid arthritis are actually the small joints of the hands, such as the fingers, the thumbs, the wrists, the feet, and the ankles. However, rheumatoid arthritis can affect any large joint as well. So it can affect your knees, it can affect your ankles, it can affect your hips. And in some people, it's such a varied disease, but in some people, just a few joints are affected, and in other, many joints are involved. So interesting. It's interesting that it's a disease that has such a wide variation of joints being affected. And that's different from your arthritises that are wear and tear ones. So the small joints of the hands can be affected alongside your others. And I remember as a medical student doing a rheumatology placement, and the I'm not going to talk about the doctor at the time, the consultant, who was horrible to me, actually. It just brought memories up. But yeah, wasn't very nice at all. But there you go. That's a story for another day. And what happened was, and this is why I never forget about rheumatoid arthritis, because he had taught me in histories that as well as talking about affecting small joints, that I always needed to ask patients if any other joint was affected. And I remember forgetting it one day, and he gave me a real telling off. In fact, he told me off so badly that I started crying, but I've never forgotten it. So in a way, yes, such teachers are really good, but because you don't forget what to ask the patient, but also it's interesting to note that it is one of those arthritises which actually affects other joints as well, and that sets it different and apart to those arthritises that are sort of, just mainly affect your large joints. So that's what it is. So we spoke a little bit about joint symptoms. So the symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis are quite varied. So we can talk a little bit about why they're varied as well. And the other thing, just sort of going back to the joints that are affected in rheumatoid arthritis, the funny thing is that the joints that are affected in rheumatoid arthritis aren't symmetrical. So it doesn't mean that if one knee is affected, the other will be. It is quite sporadic. It's quite asymmetrical. So you might have the joints of one of your hands that is affected, and at the same time, your knee of your other side might be affected. So that's really important to think about as well when it comes to rheumatoid arthritis. And in some people, many joints are affected as well. So that's something to also think about. But it's more the systemic symptoms of temperature, pain, inflammation, swelling that are so marked in rheumatoid arthritis and makes people who have rheumatoid arthritis more at risk of developing bone infections and even sepsis. So that's something important to consider. So the stiffness in rheumatoid arthritis, these are the joint symptoms. The joint symptoms are that you will get stiffness. You will get stiffness after waking up in the morning when your joints should be actually the most rested. And this stiffness lasts for an hour or more. It's difficult to move the joints. And it's usually worse first thing in the morning or after you've been resting. And this inflammation, which causes the stiffness, also causes swelling around the affected joints. So that's one thing to consider. The other symptoms that rheumatoid arthritis presents with are known as extra articular symptoms. Now, articular means joints. So extra articular means anything outside the joints. And there's a variety of symptoms associated with rheumatoid arthritis that take place in other parts of the body other than the joints. And they are small painless lumps that are called nodules. And they develop in around 1 in 4 cases of rheumatoid arthritis. Where do they occur? They normally occur on the skin, over the elbows, on the forearms, but they're harmless and they won't give you pain. They're painless, but they are rheumatoid nodules and they're painless, small lumps as well. Then you get inflammation around your tendons, and this is because the tissue that covers the tendons is similar to the covering of the joints that is called the synovium, if you remember. And then we have anemia, and you can get tiredness because of a lack of blood supply. We are now hopefully approaching an azan, so we're just going to wrap up quickly to tell you that rheumatoid arthritis can also have an associated high temperature and a fever. And in few cases, inflammation develops in other parts of the body, such as the lungs, the heart, the blood vessels, and the eyes. It's uncommon, but if it does occur, it can cause various symptoms. Be back right after the azan.
You're listening to Salam Radio, and it's now time for Maghrib Azan. This Azan is sponsored by UK Islamic Mission, serving humanity since 1962.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah. Ashhadu an la أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. لا إله إلا
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم، وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم بك نحيا وبك نموت وإليك المصير. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا.
اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه.
Peterborough's community radio station, Salam Radio, 106.2 FM.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. This is your very own Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum after that wonderful Maghrib Azan. And I hope whilst you go for your prayers, you will make dua and pray for me too. And all of us here at Salam Radio. So just before the Maghrib Azan, I was communicating to you about the symptoms that we have for rheumatoid arthritis and what we expect. So I'm just going to recap on them very quickly so you get some small painless lumps around the elbows and on the forearms that are known as rheumatoid nodules. They're harmless. They don't harm you at all. You can also get a temperature and a fever. You can get inflammation around the tendons, which can cause pain in your joints. You can get anemia and you can get tiredness and fatigue as a result of rheumatoid arthritis. And in a few cases, you can also get inflammation in other parts of the body, such as the lungs, the heart, blood vessels, or the eyes, which is uncommon, but if it does occur, it causes various symptoms and problems that can lead to it becoming a little bit more serious than we expected. Now, it's interesting to note that once you are diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis or that you've got it, how does it actually develop and progress? In many cases, the symptoms develop very gradually, sometimes over several weeks or so, but typically, in most cases of rheumatoid arthritis, not in every one of them, but in most cases, you may develop some stiffness in the hands, wrists, and in the sole of the feet, especially in the morning. If you remember that I recapped that we have stiffness in your joints as soon as you wake up in the morning that lasts for about an hour or so. And more joints, such as the knees, then become affected. But this eases by midday. The stiffness and the pain and the swelling eases by midday. Now, this can come and go for a while. You may see that, I'm waking up in the morning and my joints are more swollen than usual, but it's all right by midday. And lots of people actually leave it at that and think, there's nothing really wrong because I get better by midday. It could be that I'm working hard or I've got a bit of a manual job, as is often the case. There are many housewives that actually say that they do a lot of work at home and they attribute when they get up in the morning with their joints being swollen to the fact that they've done a hard day's work and a hard day's graft the day before, been cleaning or spring cleaning, when actually it could actually be symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis. And what we do see is a progression of this disease over several weeks and months as well. But that's not always the case. So what can we see in some cases? In some cases, we can see pain and swelling develop quickly in many joints, and sometimes over a few days that spans, and that can be very painful indeed. And some people have bouts of symptoms that can affect several joints all at the same time, and each bout can last a few days, then it goes away, and then it can occur again. And then you can get the development of persistent symptoms that don't go away. So there's a change and a variation of pattern of how people suffer from rheumatoid arthritis. And a really common symptom in women, more like, is that the disease affects just one or two joints at first, often the knees. And the non-joint symptoms, such as muscle pains, anemia, weight loss, and high temperature, are sometimes more obvious at first before joint symptoms develop too. And that is why the severity of rheumatoid arthritis really does greatly vary from person to person. And that is why it's also known as a chronic relapsing remitting condition, which means that it can come and then it can go away and give you a couple of weeks of respite, and then it can come back again with a vengeance. So there is no reason why that happens, but why the inflammation flares up for a while and goes away, there is no real evidence to tell us why that actually happens. It's just that your immune system doesn't like the joints and it comes out and it starts picking on them, which is what I usually say to make people and patients understand the normal disease progression course. Now, the amount of disability which develops usually depends upon how much damage is done over time to the affected joints. In a minority of cases, the disease is constantly progressive and severe joint damage and disability can develop very quickly. Now, the joint damage is that the inflammation can damage the cartilage. Remember the soft cushion-like structures between each joint or bone end, and they can become eroded and worn. The bone underneath can become thin. The joint capsule and nearby ligaments and tissues around the joint may also become damaged. And joint damage develops gradually, but the speed at which the damage develops varies from person to person. Over time, joint damage can lead to deformities, and it may become difficult to use those affected joints. For example, the fingers and wrists, like I said, become very commonly affected. So a good grip and other tasks that people undertake when they're moving using their hands may become difficult. So some of the things that patients present to me often is that they can't hold a mug of tea, for example, in the morning. It's very difficult for them, or they can't lift up a plate because they find that their joints are weak and it's painful for them. Or performing other tasks like just buttering toast. So it's these sort of fine movements that take place that many people who suffer from rheumatoid arthritis can no longer undergo. And that is why it's so important for all of us to understand the disease progression of this illness as well. And there are lots of modern treatments. That limit or even stop the progression of the disease. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about them as well. But if you've just joined us, this is the tail end of the Body, Health and Mind show. And the show is on rheumatoid arthritis. I'm Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum, and I've got some wonderful people that are on board listening at this moment in time. So yeah, do comment on the live stream on Facebook if you want to know more about it, or even just put in a comment about how you find the show or a question at all. I'd be more than happy to answer your queries. Now, rheumatoid arthritis is actually diagnosed through the symptoms. So if you've got stiffness for more than an hour in the morning, if you're a smoker, it's got no real affiliation with family heritage. Although if you've got a family member who suffers from a connective tissue disorder, then you also may be prone to developing a connective tissue or an immunosuppressive disorder as well, or an autoimmune disorder. A blood test. So the common test is to check for a protein in the blood called the rheumatoid factor. Now, rheumatoid factor being positive doesn't always mean that you're going to have rheumatoid arthritis, because for many patients who have rheumatoid arthritis, rheumatoid factor is only positive in 2 in 3 people who are diagnosed with it. However, 1 in 20 of the normal population also have a positive rheumatoid factor. So it's important that we keep that into consideration. It's also true that some people who have rheumatoid arthritis don't have rheumatoid factor. So a positive rheumatoid factor, although it could be suggestive of rheumatoid arthritis, it's not exactly a diagnosis for it. So we then have to undergo other blood tests, and there is a blood test known as CCP, which actually stands for, wait for it, it's a very long name, cyclic citrullinated peptide, which is a protein. And if you detect that in a blood sample, that most likely means if you've got symptoms of joint swelling and pain in your joints, it most certainly probably means that you've got rheumatoid arthritis if your CCP is positive as well. And it's more specific than rheumatoid factor is in the diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis. Now, the blood tests may become more commonly done to diagnose rheumatoid arthritis. Now, the other investigations that are usually done are things like x-rays. So an x-ray of the hands or the feet, and in that you see destruction or erosions of the joint and also of the synovium, if you remember, that little tissue that binds the bones together. And that can also be seen on an x-ray of the hands and the feet. And it's important to also know that people that have rheumatoid arthritis may also have other diseases associated with rheumatoid arthritis. And some of them are anemia, like I said. Some people can get disease of the heart. They can get cardiovascular diseases, such as an angina. They can even suffer from heart attacks. They can even have strokes. Infections, if you remember, draw your attention to the young girl that I treated when I was a house officer. She had sepsis as a result of having rheumatoid arthritis, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, something that has stayed with me throughout my life. So you can get infections in the joint, and you can get thinning of the bones, something which is known as brittle bone disease and osteoporosis. Now, it's not clear why people with rheumatoid arthritis have a higher than average chance of developing these conditions. But one possibility is that, on average, people with rheumatoid arthritis tend to have more risk factors for developing some of these conditions. So when you've got rheumatoid arthritis, you'll have a lack of exercise. You won't be able to move as much. Your circulation is impaired, and that can have an impact on your heart health and your circulation health, which is what could be a risk factor for developing a heart attack. So that makes sense, doesn't it? And some of the medicines used to treat rheumatoid arthritis actually do suppress your immune system. So this could be a factor for increased risk of developing infections, because that is why they check your blood tests. And then there are other complications as well. Sometimes you can get tendon rupture too. So it's very, very important that we know what the disease progression is and how we need to treat it. And this is where I come on to the last 3 minutes of the show, where I want to talk a little bit about treatment. And this is primarily and only by something known as disease-modifying medicines. And there are a number of medications called disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs, which are called DMARDs. And what they do is that they ease symptoms, but also reduce the damaging effect that this disease has on the joints. And how they do that, they work by blocking the way inflammation develops in the joint in the first place. And they do that by blocking certain chemicals which are involved in the inflammation process. And if you don't know the names of these drugs, I'll give you them. And some of them are called methotrexate, some of them are called sulfasalazine, some of them are called azathioprine, and the other medication is hydroxychloroquine. So very complex medications to talk about. And it's these medicines that have actually improved the outlook of treating rheumatoid arthritis. So it's very important that once this is diagnosed, to start on these medications as soon as is possible to either stop the progression or stop the disease completely. And it is possible. Now, in the last minute of the show, there are biological medications that are used that also have a disease-modifying effect against rheumatoid arthritis, and also something known as medications that They are called biologics because they mimic substances produced by the human body, such as antibodies. And what they do is then they promote the production of healthy tissue within rheumatoid arthritis. And maintaining good oral hygiene helps you as well from getting infections. And also having a look at how to control your pain by using anti-inflammatories and other medications in between when you're not having the disease-modifying drugs. Well, that's the last bit of the show. Join me again next week with Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum and the Body, Health and Mind Show. Assalamu alaikum.